Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and OpenCore Legacy Patcher has a brand new version available, 1.1.0. In this video, we're going to go over all the changes and fixes in this release, along with double down on our testing Macs. We've got 6 available. We're going to go over a desktop 2013 Mac Pro, a Touch Bar 2007 MacBook Pro, and a non-metal 17-inch 2011 MacBook Pro. Then we're also going to cover macOS Ventura, macOS Monterey, and macOS Big Sur, even though Apple doesn't support it anymore, just to make sure the 1.1.0 update installs okay. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump in and get started. Now, I created a whole video that went over macOS Sonoma 14.0, macOS Ventura 13.6, and macOS Monterey 12.7 on 11.1.0. But now that 14.1, 13.6.1, and 12.7.1 came out, everything has changed along with some of the issues on 14.1. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly go over some of the main features and then jump right into some of the testing that I had completed all this week. First of all, a big change for the T1 security chip, and it is now supported on 2016 and 2017 MacBook Pros. This is a huge fix because when it first came out, the Touch ID was not available, but now you can go in there after installing 1.1.0 and enable Touch ID for your Touch Bar MacBook Pro. So that's a big fix. There was also some improvements made for 14.1. There was added FaceTime camera support and USB 1.1 support, which was actually causing some kernel panics when 14.1 was installed. There was also some issues with Intel Broadwell iGPUs to resolve rendering issues, and there was also an update to non-metal binaries for non-metal Macs that resolves some unresponsive weather application, resolves a full screen menu bar covering up the app toolbar, and resolved an unfocused password windows. Now, when that update came out, everything was fine. I created my video. I was covering everything with 14.0 and 1.1.1, but then Sonoma hit, actually unscheduled a day after when it was predicted to come out, and kind of screwed up the whole schedule. And then some of the reports started to come in with some issues with the 14.1 update when users were trying to update it to it. And then in my 14.1 video, I always test before I say, hey, this is working, at least on a couple machines. So when I tested on my Mac Pro 2013. The problem was I was using Ethernet, and all the problems started with people that were on Wi-Fi. So that did not work out so well, and that's why I tried to rush this video out here, that if you are having issues, you can look at this one, and it was covering some of those issues. And it has to do with usually the Wi-Fi. When it comes back up after the update, it doesn't have Wi-Fi, and then it tries to reach out to get the kernel debug kit to be able to download and install for the drivers. It's unable to do that, and that's when it fails and causes booting issues. Now that we covered that, now I wanted to talk about the mainline support for 14.0 and 14.1, and then Ventura and macOS Monterey. So I created this handy chart that can show all my testing from when I did my testing with 14.0, 13.6, and 12.7. Everything was great. We've got no problems with our Sonoma install, all green across all 3 of our machines. On 13.6 green, 12.7 green, and even on Big Sur 10.7.10, good to go. Now the problems came in when I started testing different versions on Wi-Fi, and you can see what happened here. We have our yellow in here because, well, it worked if we were on Ethernet, but if we tried to do the 14.1 and then apply the root patches for 14.1, we had issues. We also had issues on our 2017 MacBook Pro. It needed the KDK, couldn't get it, and it failed, and it stopped booting to a black screen. And the same thing happened with our 2011 17-inch. Couldn't get the KDK, and then it applied the patches, but they weren't all there. It rebooted, and then it booted to a black screen. We were able to repair these devices here, and they were good to go, but that just goes to show you how many changes that Apple is making that could cause so many problems for the developers. And that's why it's a lot of times recommended to maybe stay on Ventura or macOS Monterey because they're so solid. No issues whatsoever here across the board. But Apple is going to be making so many changes to Sonoma for a little while here, for the next couple of months, that we could have some problems here. So that's why if you're going to make it work on Sonoma, again, it works, but it might be a little bit bumpy here and there when they make these on-the-fly changes like this. So we're going to hop over to the other machines now. Okay, here's our fleet of Sonoma devices. We've got our Touch Bar, which is important for testing because we want to make sure we have Touch Bar compatibility. Here we can go hit lock screen, and then we can use our Touch ID to be able to unlock it. and that's working great. So that's showing that Touch ID is working with 1.1.0 and no other issues that we can see here, but we still had that Wi-Fi issue, and that is being worked on by the developers. And as soon as the next version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher, for example 1.2.0, comes out, you can bet I'll cover that, and I'll reproduce the issue just to make sure we can recover from that. The next machine we got here is our Mac Pro, and that's the one that we didn't have any issues whatsoever because we were on Ethernet. But I'm going to make sure from now on I'm on Wi-Fi to be able to cover that so we don't have any issues in the future. But it installed okay. We're running really well on 1.1.0. Now the next machine here, our 17-inch non-metal 2011 that we had issues in, we had to go into recovery and we had to repair, but we are now back up. And you'll notice something here. I've got my Bluetooth. If you've been following the last two updates, I've had issues with Bluetooth with this 2011, and I'll tell you what we had to do to fix it here. Shout out to my buddy here, macOS Salmonella 14.9.3, pointed me to what needed to be done. It's actually a known issue that will be fixed in a later release. What the problem with my Bluetooth was all I needed to do was reset the NVRAM. And it seems pretty simple, right? But I was thinking that maybe it was something with the machine or something with the patches with this particular hardware, but that fixed me up and my Bluetooth is up and running again. So thanks again for that tip. And if you are having that problem, you can give that a try until the next version of the patcher comes out. So that covers it for our macOS Sonoma fleet of Macs. And now let's talk about macOS Ventura. Now, in my opinion, macOS Ventura is now the main workhorse for our operating system, and that is because Apple has now turned Ventura into just a security-based release schedule. So after the new operating system comes out, macOS Ventura is most likely only going to be seeing security fixes with the occasional major bug fix. But that's good for us because that means that they'll be making no large changes to the operating system that could screw up all the changes that were developed by the developers for the patches. And that's why we didn't see any issues with macOS Ventura, macOS Monterey, and macOS Big Sur with the 1.1.0 release. It was all 14.1 and all the changes that were happening there. So with this release, we have no issues. The patches installed wonderfully. No problem at all with 1.1.0 and macOS Ventura 13.6.1. Now let's talk about macOS Monterey 12.7.1. The update installed just fine, and the automatic patcher came up and installed everything with the OpenCore and the root patches, no issues whatsoever. So when we fire it up here, we can see that we didn't have any problems here. The post-install root patches installed fine. All things are showing good for 1.1.0. Now I wanted to show you a quick trick here. Remember how I was telling you that the alias only likes to hang out over here on the other side of the recently opened apps? What you can do is you can grab, once the app opens and you can see it in the recently opened, you can actually drag it over here to the dock if you wanted to be able to have a shortcut in the dock. So we can just close OpenCore Legacy Patcher, and when all this closed, you can open it up right from here if you just didn't want the alias hanging out over there. And all that does is point to, remember, library, application support, Dortania, and that's where the apps is stored. So again, macOS Monterey, no issues here with 1.1.0. Now let's talk about macOS Big Sur. Good old trusty macOS Big Sur, but unfortunately Big Sur is now dead in the eyes of Apple. It is not going to get any more security release fixes for it at all. So that means if someone develops a malware piece for Big Sur, it's very possible that macOS Big Sur will be vulnerable because Apple just is not going to patch it anymore. They've committed support for 3 operating systems, including the latest version, which will get all the security patches. They've also said that the next 2, like Monterey and Ventura, won't necessarily get all of the latest patches due to architectural differences or core operating system changes. But with Big Sur, it is now no longer supported, but there's a lot of people that still use it. That's why I want to at least cover it, because 1.1.0 works fine, no issues whatsoever on this 2011 non-metal MacBook Pro, and it does need the root patches. But what's interesting about Big Sur, and you've heard me talk about this before, Big Sur is one of the more unique operating systems in the fact that Apple still included all of the drivers needed for metal compatible Macs. So if you have a 2010 and newer and install OpenCore Legacy Patcher, it doesn't even have to root patch the volume because all the drivers are there. That's the whole point of the root patching, to add those drivers in that Apple removes. But it was nice that Apple left them in the operating system so we didn't even have to open it up and patch it. So that's a very unique situation, especially if you need metal heavy applications that might have issues with the patcher in future versions. So that's macOS Big Sur on 1.1.0, working great. Now before we go here, I want to talk about a little bit more about that 14.1 issue. First of all, ASentientBot put out a message that is about 14.1 causing additional problems with kernel panics on some systems. So again, like I mentioned in my previous video, to wait for installing 14.1 right now. Again, just hold off. Even though we've got some fixes and stuff, just hold off on 14.0 until the developers can gather more information and they can put out a fix for the next version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher. The issue, likely related to leftover KEX and KDKs in library, is being actively investigated by the developers. Please refer to Sandbox for some instructions, and that's where some of the instructions that we were working on, because we were all helping some of the people in the chat last night and the night before with some of the booting issues, and that's how some of these instructions we came up with to be able to do. And we talked about in my previous video on how to boot into recovery and remove the root patches. Once that's done, that's only step one. Then you'll have to basically either connect to Ethernet or be able to copy over the 14.1 KDK. And we've got the download link for that and to be able to do that. Now, a lot of people don't even have another Mac, so if you had a Windows device, format that drive in exFAT or FAT32 to be able to copy the package there and then be able to copy that from the Windows device to the Mac, run that install, then run the root patches, and you're okay. Now keep in mind, some of the people were able to boot into safe mode. In my two examples, safe mode was not working, and that's why we had to do this. If you can hold down the shift key and get into the operating system, then you can do some of these things. And that wasn't the only issue though. Some of the issues were the library extensions folder. So let's take a look at that real quick. So we can go into Macintosh hard drive and then library extensions. And you should only see the high point OP and the high point RR or the soft RAID. Don't delete anything in there, but delete anything that is left other than those three, because those could be part of the problem. Then run the patcher on the internet and make sure to see if that runs, and that could be fixing some of the other issues, because some of the other problems where a user would put in their password and it would continue to log in, whether it was a kernel panic or problems with the extension. That was some of the things that the patcher does, is try to clear this out when there's problems. So that's what you should see in library extensions. Now, the other area that we talked about was library developer KDKs. This is where the kernel debug kit is stored, and to make it even more resilient, the package is stored there once it's downloaded so it can access this again if it needs it. The original problem was when an update is installed, some of the files in here get erased and deleted. So that's why the package was needed. Then when the new KDK comes out, like 14.1, you'll see the folder right here. So that should fix some of those issues. I hope that the things that we talked about fix the issue for you. And some other users didn't have any problems at all because they were already on Ethernet or they had a different configuration. Keep in mind, 83 different models. Just think of the amount of different configurations, hardware, and testing that needs to be done with all the changes that Apple is doing. And the developers are doing a fantastic job. And I can bet you that the next version of OpenCore will be coming out soon. I'll be sure to cover it. And I hope everything went okay on your install and it went okay on your fix. Let me know in the comments how everything went with you. Are you holding off for now? Did you update and have a problem? You were able to fix it? Did you downgrade? A couple of people unfortunately had to do that. Just let me know in the comments and we'll talk to you in the next video. Thanks.